longer find another.
Welcome everyone. Welcome everyone. Welcome everyone to another Ref Brandon and the Todd family YouTube video. Wherever you are, whatever you may be doing, thank you so much for making Ref Brandon and the Todd family a part of your day. We always greatly appreciate it. It's a Friday. Hopefully everybody's had a good week so far. And if your kids are in a school system where they've been out of school this week for spring break, hopefully they have enjoyed their spring break and have not driven you crazy so far. Today I'm going to be talking about college football, but it's something we have not discussed in a couple of weeks. I know that I've discussed some of the, I guess you call them power rankings. We've did the ACC so far and the SEC so far. But today I'm going to be talking about a schedule for one certain team. We've already did a few schedules, a couple of teams in the SEC, and I believe one team so far in the ACC. Today we're going to be talking about Penn State, and I'm going to run down their schedule for you, tell you how many games I think they're going to win in their conference and overall. If you have any thoughts on Penn State, please feel free to let me know. I don't think I did Penn State's preseason schedule last year. The only team that I 100% remember doing in the Big Ten last year was Iowa, and that was because me and my man Mike had actually discussed their schedule, so I figured I would go ahead and do it. But I do not remember doing Penn State's schedule last year. They open up in conference play, playing against Purdue, and I love the way the Big Ten does that because not all teams, but most teams open up their season playing a non-conference game. Sometimes it's a good non-conference opponent, and sometimes it's a terrible non-conference opponent, but most teams open up their season by playing a non-conference game. That way, if by some chance you lose, even though it hurts to lose, it doesn't destroy your season because it's a non-conference game, and it's good to play a non-conference game, whether it's a good opponent or not. That way, if you have anything wrong, you've got one extra game to figure it out because you really don't know how many problems you have when you're playing each other in practice. And college football doesn't have a preseason, so if you open up with a good opponent and it's a conference opponent and you lose, you've already pretty much destroyed your season, which can be good or bad depending on how you look at it. But the majority of the teams in the Big Ten open up their season by playing games against each other. So you come out of the gate playing meaningful games. Penn State plays Purdue in week 1, and then they play their 3 non-conference games all right in a row. Of course, we know some conferences play 8 games, some conferences play 9 games. The Big Ten plays 9 conference games, so they only have 3 non-conference games. Penn State's 3 are all right in a row. Week 2, Ohio. Week 3, Auburn. And week 4, Central Michigan. Now we know Ohio is, well, they're Ohio, and Central Michigan is Central Michigan. So the only decent non-conference opponent Penn State plays is Auburn. But this year, I'm not even going to say that's decent. I think Auburn is terrible. I think Ohio or Central Michigan may give Penn State more of a game than Auburn will. And then after Central Michigan, they're back in conference play against Northwestern. And then they have their bye week. I think they're going to beat Purdue, Ohio, Auburn, Central Michigan, and Northwestern and start out the season 5-0. And then after their bye week is when they play 3 of their best 4 opponents right in a row. They play Michigan, Minnesota, and Ohio State 3 weeks back to back to back. And then they play Indiana, Maryland, Rutgers, and then they wrap up the regular season against Michigan State. Now, I think they'll beat Minnesota, and I think they'll beat Michigan State, but I think they'll lose to Michigan and Ohio State. So I've got them going 7-2 in the Big Ten, 10-2 overall, with conference losses to Michigan and Ohio State. But playing Michigan, Minnesota, and Ohio State 3 weeks in a row, you've got to feel bad for Penn State. You would think they would have, spread it out a little bit more, but they didn't. They gave them those 3 games right in a row. And then they play a lighter Big Ten schedule against Indiana, Maryland, and Rutgers before they wrap up against Michigan State. I do think Michigan State's going to be decent this year, but I think Penn State will beat them. So again, I've got them going 7-2 in the Big Ten, 10-2 overall with losses to Michigan and Ohio State. Now, of course, Penn State at quarterback, Sean Clifford is returning for his 25th year at Penn State, but he does have a competition this year. Now, James Franklin says there is an open competition, but how much truth there is to that, I don't know. James Franklin's always been a big fan of Sean Clifford, although I've never been impressed with him at all. But if there is an open competition, you've got Christian Velo, Drew Aller, and Bo Prabula as the 3 quarterbacks right behind Clifford on the depth chart. Now, Drew Aller is the one they've been hyping up since he was a junior in high school. So I'm anxious to see if he will get any significant playing time this year. As far as the running backs go, they've got 2 freshmen coming in named Nicholas Singleton and Katron Allen. And both of those guys are top 10 recruits, making Penn State one of only 2 schools in America having 2 commitments from top 10 running backs. And they also have Devin Ford and Kayvon Lee. Now, as far as the wide receiver group goes, Jahan Dotson is finally gone. He is off to the NFL. Of course, we'll find out where he is going coming up here right around the corner as the NFL draft is next weekend. But they've got 2 incoming freshmen at the wide receiver groups named Caden Saunders and Omari Evans that are going to try to lead the wide receiver core and replacing Jahan Dotson. And on defense, they're bringing back P.J. Mustipher and Keziah Izzard and Devon Ellis, who are probably, in my opinion, the 3 returning best defensive players. But they also have Manny Diaz this year as the defensive coordinator, and he is an excellent defensive coordinator. So if I'm right and Penn State goes 7-2 in the Big Ten, 10-2 overall, I believe they'll finish either right inside the top 10 or maybe just outside the top 10, depending on what everybody else around them does. But if their 2 losses are to Michigan and Ohio State, we know the Buckeyes are going to be a top 5 team. And I'm not sure about Michigan yet, if they'll be as good as they were last year or not. I don't think they will be, but I could be wrong. But either way, they'll at least be ranked. So if one of your losses comes to a top 5 team and your other loss comes to a top 20 team, then I don't see a reason why you'd be any further than maybe number 13, but more than likely they'll be in the top 10. Again, any thoughts on Penn State's schedule, please feel free to let me know. Let's go ahead and get our dad joke of the day in here. I used to work at a calendar factory, but I got fired because I took a couple days off. And that wraps it up for today's Ref Brandon and the Todd Family YouTube video. Until next time, it's Ref Brandon saying, just like in pro wrestling, life can be over by the count of 3. Tell your friends and family how much you love them. Bye.